Very warm welcome to you this morning. Let me just wait just a moment to see if anyone else is going to join us and we'll kick off. We've got more people dripping in, so we'll just give it a few moments. Okay, that chime seems to be a good time to start. Very warm welcome to everyone on this Saturday. Hope you've been enjoying all the sessions so far this weekend. I know that I have, and my 12-year-old, my diabetic son, he's been enjoying. I've been hearing the laughter through the door as well. So he's been having a good time. Hope you all are too. Before we kick off, just wanted to say the conference is being held because we're lucky enough to have lots of sponsors who are helping support us. So do take a moment if you can to visit the website and click on the sponsors and see what they have to say. So this morning, this is a very interesting talk for me. We're very lucky to have Candice Ward with us this morning. I don't know what stage people are at with regard to MDI or on pumps, but we're certainly just about, well, we're almost due a new pump. So this is a very timely talk from you this morning, Candice. So I'm looking forward to hearing it. Candice is an advanced diabetes dietitian, and she's been working very closely, and I'm sure she'll tell us more about it, with getting the CamAPS off the ground. So she'll be able to tell us more about that. And so during the talk, if you have any questions at all, please click on the Q&A button and type your question in, and I'll do my best to ask the questions of Candice at the end of the session. Also, if there's any chat, if you want to introduce yourselves, or if you've got anything else you want to just mention, please pop that in the chat. And again, I'll see if I can raise that with Candice at the end. So I'm going to pass across to Candice now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen now so I can show you, just load my slides, but thank you for inviting me to talk. I am very excited to share the CamAPS FX system with you. It is a bit of a mouthful. Cambridge Artificial Pancreas System is the CamAPS, and the FX is about the model and the version of the closed loop system. Roman Havorka, who is the brains behind the system, felt that Florence was a good name for the first algorithm. So Florence Nightingale sitting next to your bed, supporting you with your type 1 diabetes. So that's where the FX comes from. So I'm going to introduce the system today to you. We are very proud to be the world's first app that controls diabetes glucose levels. So it is downloaded and housed on your personal smartphone. At the moment, it's only in an Android version. We will have an iOS version out sometime next year, and we'll let you know as soon as that is available. But at the moment, it's downloaded onto an Android smartphone that then links up the CGM information to the pump, and the algorithm is the brains that drives glucose levels. It also links up with Diasend, or soon to be Gluco, for data visibility. So this is the system when we talk about it as a whole, but I'm going to focus today quite solely on the app and the app's functionality. The app is designed to be interoperable. So in time, it will be like a pick and mix. You will be able to use different CGMs and different pumps. But at the moment, we link with the Dexcom G6 and any of the 2 Dana pumps available on the market, the Dana RS and the Dana I, which are fantastic pumps and CGM in their own right. So who are we? CamDiab, strange company. We were founded recently in 2018. We're based in Cambridge because we've been working with the University of Cambridge to create this research over the last 15 years. And now the company has been developed to then bring it out into practice so you can use it for routine diabetes care. And our mission is to sort of help make living life with diabetes easier. The journey we've taken, as I said, is a 15-year journey, starting right back in the early 2000s, doing sort of safety studies, looking at inpatients, then moving out into overnight, and finally into real life. And we continue to develop and deliver research to provide more and more evidence to why closed loop is the sort of treatment of choice if we for type 1 diabetes, and to help with the reimbursement process, because closed loop isn't widely reimbursed across the UK at this stage, but hopefully soon, with the NICE guidelines being published next year, it will be much more equal access. The results of our clinical studies that we've done in from very young children all the way through life stages, right up until sort of adults and some adults with challenging complications, we have been able to show reduced HbA1c, so reduced average glucose levels, increased time in range, reduced levels of time spent in hypoglycemia, and importantly, improved quality of life. We always worry when we add extra technology and extra equipment, you know, are we actually adding burden? Because type 1 diabetes is bad enough on itself, but we're wanting to know that we reduce burden, which our research has shown, and I'll show you later in clinical practice as well. We are, because of this research, CE marked for type 1 diabetes from the age of 1 up, including pregnancy. So we are the only closed loop system that is CE marked and suitable for under 6. The other 2 systems are from 6 and 7 up, and the only one in pregnancy. So at the moment, our youngest person on the system is actually just 4 months old. It was felt by the clinical team that CamAPS was the right choice for this newly diagnosed little one. And our oldest on the system is 82. So it is a real closed loop system for all life stages. As you can see, it's suitable for body weights from 10 to 300 kilos and total insulin needs from 5 to 350 kilos. So really taking into account every body who has type 1 diabetes and their own requirements. The app itself, once you've downloaded it onto your Android smartphone, actually houses the algorithm, which is a predictive algorithm, and I'll talk a little bit more about how it kind of works. It is also the one-stop shop, so you will get the same CGM alerts and alarms that you would expect from your Dexcom on the app. So it controls and starts and ends the Dexcom for you, so it's the only app you need. It also is the bolus calculator. So if you tap here on the knife and fork, it brings up the bolus calculator. Sorry, my is a bit slow. Gone too far now. Bolus calculator that you can add, just like you used to use on your pump. You can put in your carbs, and it will suggest an insulin to carb, dose of insulin based on your insulin to carb ratios. We designed it to be used in different ways because people use systems in different sort of functionalities, as it were. So carbs, you can enter it if you got a packet and it's 49 grams of carbs, you can put in 49 grams of carbs. The other thing is we've got these preset meal sizes, so you can pre-program your preset meal sizes to maybe help a child who's starting to take responsibility for their own bolusing. They could be told, you know, when you have your snack, tap on the little knife and fork. Mum or dad have preset that at 5 or 10 grams of carbs, and then they can be supported to bolus insulin. Or if the child's going on a play date and a packed lunch has gone with, and the family they're visiting doesn't carbohydrate count, mum and dad could say, tap on the big knife and fork to deliver the insulin for that meal. And so support that sort of ability to be able to just live normal life. The really nice thing as well is it uploads data automatically every 5 to 10 minutes. Information will be streamed up from the app to Diasend. So mum and dad can have the Diasend app on their personal phones and be able to remotely monitor what's going on, as well as that information flows through to the clinic, and the clinic will have all the latest information at their fingertips. There's no waiting for clinic appointments or being able to upload at home so that you can provide the information to your healthcare clinic so that they can support you. It's all automatically done. The last thing for peace of mind is we have SMS alerts for guardians. We can have up to 5 nominated guardians that are linked to the app, and they can be switched on and off at different times. So mum and dad may be wanting to be on all the time, but maybe grandparents or a teacher at school would only be wanting to be sort of a follower when the child's with them. And so any alerts and alarms that happen on the phone that is with the child will be sent to the follower, so that it's just if you get an alert, you can then sort of help that person as and when it is appropriate. So the learning loop, how does it work? Well, we've designed it to be very simple and very easy to use, but that shouldn't think that it's a very simple algorithm. It's a very complex algorithm that's working in the background constantly, but it's easy to set up. So it only needs your body weight and your average total daily dose to kick off and start working. It is very adaptive because of the way it works, and it's independent of the program settings on the pump, which are a major difference between the other 2 systems that are available at the moment. Their algorithms actually incorporate the settings into how the algorithm's working. So if those settings may not be quite accurate, it can affect the algorithm itself. So how does it work? It gets its CGM data every 5 minutes, pops it into this learning algorithm to be able to predict what glucose levels are going to occur over the next sort of half an hour. And then it adjusts the insulin every 8 to 12 minutes based on the information. So it's constantly adjusting. And the other nice thing is it's got a continual feedback loop based on the information it's delivered, so the insulin it's delivered along the way, as well as the information that's being fed to it from the bolus calculator. So how much insulin is needed for meals, how much carbohydrates in there to be able to support glucose levels across the 24-hour periods, both when there's no food as well as when there is food. It can also be personalized. It has a personal glucose target that can be as low as 4.4 or as high as 11 across the 24 hours of the day. And that's what the algorithm is going to constantly aim for. So different people at different stages of their lives, or whether they're on holiday or working, may need different personal glucose targets. It also has something called boost and ease off. They're equivalent to very sophisticated increased temporary basal rates. So delivering boost will make the algorithm a little bit more aggressive. So times where you're a bit more insulin resistant, maybe illness, maybe stress. Maybe there's been a set failure on the insulin pump and there's been missed insulin and you've gone high as a result of that. Boost will help the algorithm get you back down quicker. The great thing about Boost is it won't overshoot the mark. So when it predicts it's going to hit your target, it stops boosting, even though Boost is programmed to still be running. It is clever and is able to go, no, I'm not going to boost anymore because I'll push over the mark. Ease off is the activity setting, so it makes the algorithm more relaxed, aiming for a higher personal glucose target while ease off is set to allow people to be slightly higher to reduce the risk of hypos when you're busy doing sport or just being physically active, or for maybe our older sort of young adults who may be going out dancing and then maybe having a drink overnight, and so reducing the risks of hypos the next morning to be put on ease off overnight. You can see a lot of information on the app itself. So if your phone's upright and you turn it on its side with the app open, you see this kind of information. So you can see what the insulin's being delivered. So that's the blue line, the algorithm working very flexibly. You can see glucose data, when boost and when ease off is being used. So you can see what's happening right now up to 15 days back. We don't recommend you use this for pattern changes, but it is really helpful, and this is what it really looks like in real life, to see if glucose levels are dropping, do I need to step in and do anything? Or can I see, okay, the algorithm shut off to 0, I feel quite comfortable it's just going to skim the mark, or vice versa. Glucose levels are rising. I'm going to help it out by popping on boost, which is where this pink is. You can see how much more aggressive the algorithm has been to get glucose levels back down again. This is somebody who was feeling a little poorly after a COVID vaccination, and it's still dropped down to 0, even though boost's on, because it thought, oh, it's going to overshoot the mark. We would, this is what Dyson would look like on your mobile app, to look at the same information. So glucose trends, where the carbs, boluses are going in. So there's lots of data visibility. And this is what your healthcare professional, or if you looked on Dyson on a computer, would look like, where boost and ease off and everything's being used. So that data visibility to support both in the moment decisions as well as pattern recognition to make changes and keep tweaking away to keep time and range as tight as possible. CamAPS obviously supports you around customer service. So we've got email and phone that you can contact us if there's any technical issues. We have full online training. We offer virtual transition to the system, where you have people like me supporting you, starting the system, link it all up and answering your questions. We've got a lot of support for schools, so individual plans for the children. We've got webinars, we've got training for the schools, lots of fact sheets, obviously the normal user manuals with troubleshooting guides, and then a really popular closed Facebook group. This group is run by people who are using the system. They created it off their own backs. It's not something we asked them to do. And it's a great source of information around people who've starting the system or thinking about starting the system or on the system. So CamAPS for kids, if you search that on Facebook and ask to be invited, is for parents of younger children who are using the system. And the wider CamAPS user group is for everyone. So some people double up if they're parents, and also older young adults and older adults on the system just are on the user group. So do think about looking out for them. The one thing I do want to end up with, because of course I'm going to be saying it's a great system, but what about what people say who are using the system? So I'm going to just take you through a few of the people who are using the system at different life stages so you can hear what they're saying.
Don't need to tell the system.
Well, no. Let's start at the beginning, shall we?
I would 100% recommend it. It won't fix everything, but it will like absolutely change your peace of mind. And
oh dear, what is going on with my video? Apologies.
I would 100% recommend it. It won't fix everything, but it will like absolutely change your peace of mind and add a level back into your family life that maybe you thought you could never have again. So, well, that's what I feel.
Yeah, I mean, also with him because he started school in September, and for that as well, that made a huge difference.
Yes.
Just you know, again, just being able to see that he's okay, and having the communication with the teacher, and just being able to say, you know, what you need to do, just by looking at the data, has been hugely helpful.
Yes.
My daughter's on CamAPS, and I cannot overstate how much it has improved our lives. The thing I love most about it is that, unlike the other closed loops on the market, you don't need to tell the system what you think the basal rate and the correction factor is, because the system works it out for you. So for the other closed loops on the market, you have to put in the basal and you have to put in the correction factor. And if you get those wrong, the algorithms will do their best to help you, but they won't work as well. But CamAPS doesn't care what I think the basal rate is. And I love the fact that it is not remotely interested in my opinion, because it knows it can do it better than I can. And that's brilliant for 3 reasons. So the first reason is that it means that the basal rates and the correction factors are much more likely to be right, because getting them right is a process of trial and error. And because obviously computers are much, much better than us at trial and error, of course, a clever algorithm is going to be much better than us at working out what the basal rate and what the correction factor is. The second thing is that basal rates and correction factors change. So even if you've been extremely meticulous and you've slaved away and done rigorous testing and you are absolutely confident that you've got them right, how often do you retest? Do you do it every month? Do you do it every year? Do you you've done it once ever. Well, CamAPS is testing it all the time. So every 5 minutes it gets a reading and it uses that reading to reassess whether it's right. So when the basal requirements change and when the correction factors change, you don't even notice because CamAPS is quietly working it out in the background and sorting it out for you. But the third reason, and for me, the most important reason that I love it by absolute miles, is that because I'm no longer responsible for working out these things, I never need to think to myself, is the basal right? Is the correction factor right? And that is an absolutely massive weight lifted off my shoulders and a huge reduction in how much time I spend thinking about diabetes. So I don't want to pretend that diabetes disappears with CamAPS, it doesn't. But the amount of mental energy that it takes is much, much less. And it's no exaggeration to say it has completely changed our lives.
As a family, I think we have 3 other children, so life, as you can probably imagine, is fairly busy and hectic. But I think it's taking away some of that intense burden of always, everything was always around, say around him, but around his diabetes. And I think we've definitely built in a lot more flexibility. And I think for us as parents, maybe not so much for him, but I think that worry or that anxiety of the long-term complications, to see that actually we're getting a really, good for us HbA1c, the best we've ever had. And I think it's how we've achieved that for us that's so positive. We've achieved it without him being in the 20s and being in the 2s. It's a really good, or the average is excellent, and it's about, for him, the quality of life.
All the benefits around really the cloud are to do with how kind of adjustable it is to your life and not your life having to be shaped by it. It's been something that I've come to rely upon, and I think it's for anyone who's considering whether to if they get the chance to use the cloud system, they should definitely take that opportunity, because it just gives you a lot better quality of life, and as well as making sure that you're staying obviously safe and healthy in the longer term and the shorter term.
Particularly for parents who've got worries around, blood sugars dropping in the night, the alarms are brilliant. It's not intrusive, it's not invasive, it's loud enough to wake you up, but it doesn't annoy you all night. So yeah, I really would recommend it. And as I say, I was a bit dubious at first because I've never had a pump. I've always had injections. However, it really, really has changed my life for the better.
But generally, it just did it all for me, which allowed me to think about other things and not to have to worry about diabetes. It was like a diabetes holiday, which was exactly what I need, so I don't have to worry about it all the time.
Out of the box, it just works. And in fact, I'm getting results at least as good as I was getting with Android APS, if not better, without even using any of the other functionality that's within CamAPS, like Boost or Ease Off. And I'm already getting results over 90% time in range. And the other benefit I'm finding with it is the sheer mental load of not, you build this confidence, I think, with a tool that just grows. And one of the benefits of that is you just let it get on with it. So you win your life back in that sense. It's been brilliant.
Excellent. So thank you very much for listening. I'd love to take some questions now. If anybody has any questions, I see a few chats. So Emma, can you help us with those? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. I'm pleased you did say something and not just let me carry on talking and not making me smile for a while. That wouldn't have been good. Well, I think that sounds amazing. I really liked hearing from people who are actually using it, and you can hear the relief in the voices, can't you? a couple of things you said, or actually some of the people who are using it said, for me, when my son's alarms go off in the night and he's high and I'm correcting him, and I'm aware you get to 3 days of doing the same correction, but then you still have to think, right, is the correction factor wrong? Do I need to adjust that? Is the basal wrong? Is it something he's done? There are so many different things, and 3 o'clock in the morning, your brain's just trying to tick over and work it out. I liked what one of the guys said, you just don't have to do anything. That is a real relief. So how does that, is it just that it is drip feeding the insulin, adjusting every 5 minutes? It doesn't need to know, or it must have a background insulin working. No?
So what happens is the basal's actually switched off on the pump, and it delivers microboluses of insulin all the time. So it constantly adjusts the level of insulin. In the working pancreas, you don't have 2 different streams of insulin. Your body is sensing what the glucose levels are and producing the insulin it needs to deal with that. And that's what the algorithm is trying to mimic. So as glucose levels are rising, it knows how insulin works. And so it knows, okay, if this trend, it needs to do this, at that trend, it needs to do that. So it's constantly adjusting all the time. So as you well know, every night with diabetes is different. So having a flat basal, that even if you kind of have changed it between this and this hour and this hour, every night is different. So we've seen it in all of those, and in research, it just amazes me when we're looking at the detail. There was one 6-year-old that I remembered. One night she needed 1.5 units delivered over different ways over the time she was sleeping, and for no obvious reason, the following night she needed 3.5 units. And so the one night, if you had a basal of 2 units, one night it would have been too much and one night it would have been too little. And so it's that constant adjustment, and the algorithm is fantastic at getting that right and getting really tight control. So actually on the algorithm, where on pump therapy, we'd aim for actually higher targets overnight, just to give you a little bit of room to move so you don't have so many nighttime hypos, and instead of maybe a bit tighter during the day because there's more, you're there, you're watching, you're seeing what's happening. On the CamAPS system, we do it the other way around, because the algorithm is so good at being able to adjust that we can get really tight control at night and wake up in the morning with good levels. So you start on a good level and then go forward. We have a little bit more safety cushion during the day for the targets, because especially the young children, unpredictable appetites, unpredictable activity, lots going on, stress and off to school and all of those things, and having a little bit of a cushion. The other thing that all closed loop systems are at the moment are what we call hybrid closed loop systems. So you work in partnership with them. You still have to bolus for carbs eaten, and then think sort of quite cleverly around, is it a slowly absorbed meal or not? The same things that you would do on pump therapy. Because the insulins we've got available on the market, even Fiasp and Lyumjev, the faster insulins, aren't as fast as they would as natural insulin made in the body is, because you've got other hormones, your gut hormones, which kind of tell your body as you're starting to chew, the insulin's being produced in the right levels. So it's sort of a hybrid close. So you still have to carbohydrate count, bolus the insulin beforehand, but the algorithm is able to help you in those post-meal, especially for the high fat, high protein, the pizzas and curries and things like that. So that I'd love to chat through with you, but I only had 20 minutes to talk, so I left that out. But there is lots of that functionality that the algorithm is able to help you, not only in the fasting, but around meals as well. And how do I cope with a toddler who I'm not sure is going to eat, and all of those kind of things. We've got lots of support for you if you need it.
That sounds amazing. I actually love the idea of the thought that someone is doing that for me at night, and I'm not getting up. At the moment I'm getting up every night. You have periods like that. So Now we've got some more questions coming through. What is the eligibility criteria for starting on CamAPS?
So closed loop therapy is something that you need to be eligible for. So your clinical team need to have kind of worked with you. Often people will start on injections and then go on to pump therapy, and then often go on to either Libra or CGM. And if things are still not getting to the stage that you're getting the control that you want, then closed loop therapy is something that people are thinking about. There are 3 on the market at the moment. CamAPS is the sort of new kid on the block. So often a lot of the diabetes centers are more confident or more familiar with Tandem and the Medtronic version. But we at CamDiab are working very hard to support the clinical teams around their knowledge about this system as well, and supporting people in accessing and procuring it for their patients. So it's around, if you're eligible for closed loop, it should be an option that potentially is offered to you if this is the way you want to go.
Perfect. Farah has asked, can you remote bolus?
Yes, so that's the brilliant thing about having the app on your phone. So a lot of people actually say it's great for parents of younger children, because you don't have to disturb the child, get the pump out, especially if you're pre-meal bolusing, which is what we highly recommend. You know, then the child just wants to eat because you've disrupted them at play. You can bolus from the phone and then call them 10 minutes later to come through to kitchen. As the children grow and into adulthood, the feedback from people using the system, it's great. I'm in a meeting or I'm at school, I just pick up my own personal phone and I can bolus myself. I could be WhatsApping someone. So it allows that discretion to be able to remotely bolus. You can control everything from the app. So the only time you're touching the pump is when you're doing set changes or maybe disconnecting and reconnecting for baths or showers. And the only time you're sort of having to look at the sensor is when you do the changes, and you do that from one app. So it's not having to use multiple different technologies and devices and apps. It's just really simple.
And so can you, I'm just trying to think for the case where if you've got a child who's wearing this and the parents have access on their phones, can they both, the parents, can they both bolus from their phones as well? Just
for safety reasons, only from the one phone, because you need to be close to you need to be within 6 meters of the pump to communicate, because the danger is bolusing and then maybe the other parent boluses at the same time, and you double bolus, or you know yourself, you have to be in the situation at glucose level of 5 is different if the arrows are down or arrows are up, or what's happening around. So for safety reasons, insulin's a dangerous drug, needs to be managed well, that you need to be in the area and seeing what's happening.
Yeah, good answer. Another question, at what point next year, it's going to be a tough one, will the iOS version be available?
As soon as we can, but I can't tell. But we will get that as soon as possible. But at the moment, it's Android only. And so a lot of, especially for the younger children, we would encourage the phone not to be played with. So it's still looked as a medical advice. It often, for the younger children, they're wearing the pump in a pouch, and then the phone goes in the pouch as well, and off they go. They keep those two together rather than separately. But I am also an iOS user, and so I've been pushing very hard. We will get it, but we, for valid reasons, it is an insulin delivering sort of equipment, so we can't rush and do something sort of half and push it out. It needs to be tested, but it won't take too long.
Perfect. Another, we've got Martin is asking, do you need to be based in England to start on CamAPS, or is it available to all of the UK?
So it is available to all of the UK. We have had a lot of discussions with Scotland. It's not on the framework, the Scottish framework at the moment, but they are very open to purchasing it. The Scottish framework will be available in early next year, and we'll be on that. We've just submitted for the Welsh tender, and we've got people in Wales using it. We don't have anybody in Ireland using it at the moment, but there's no reason why not. If there's a will, there's a way.
Perfect. Well, this is a good question. If your phone dies, can you still bolus from the pump as normal?
Yes. So there's always a safety mechanism. So if the phone battery sort of dies, or heaven forbid gets flushed down the loo or gets broken, things happen, mishap happen, or the sensor fails and doesn't send glucose data through, there is an automatic kick out and the pump basals start working immediately. It's not something you have to do. And then as soon as the battery of the phone's recharged, or the pump sensor data starts coming through, it'll automatically kick into closed loop. So it's not a medical emergency like it would be if the pump failed. You would need to go back to injections and get a new pump. The pump will automatically kick in. So David was talking about how great it is that the algorithm doesn't use the pump settings as part of the algorithm working, which is fabulous, but we still have those settings in the pump just as a safety net if there is a connectivity issue, that you always are getting insulin that you need for the fact that you've got type 1 diabetes. If the pump is a fully functioning pump, so it has a carb bolus calculator on it, it's got all the things you need to have to be able to use it on its own as well, which is fantastic, and for safety reasons. If the app is working, but for example, you're in your 2-hour sensor warm-up, so you lose sensor data in those 2-hour warm-ups, which is the only predictable time that we actually lose connectivity. The other times we would expect 97+% of the time you're in closed loop. But if sensor data is not flowing through, obviously the algorithm can't adjust and kicks out to the pump. You can still bolus from the bolus calculator. So the app's still working. It's just not doing the algorithm bit. But it's still the calculator. So in that's probably the most routine thing that'll happen, because it happens every 10 days when you're changing over your Dexcom sensor, that you can still, if the meal is just happening in that 2-hour period, or there's a snack or something, you can still use the same bolus calculator you always use to deliver that insulin.
And what do you do during that time? Do you finger prick, and do you put that input what the blood sugar is at that point as well?
Yes. So then if you need a correction or a under correction, you can do that, because the algorithm's not doing that clever bit for you. But when it is doing that clever bit for you, all you need to do is put in the carbs. The algorithm's going, I'm on top of this. If glucose levels are dropping or rising, it's being sort of that proactive feature. You're not thinking, is 1 unit, 2 units, half a unit, point whatever a unit. The algorithm's got it. Trust it.
Perfect. We've got a question. How small can the child be to start with this system? But I think you said it's from age 1, but you've already got a 4-month-old.
From age 1, we're starting quite routinely, newly diagnosed now, straight onto closed loop. 10 kilos is the minimum weight we can enter into the app. So if, for example, this 4-month-old baby was less than 10 kilos, we just put in 10 and we tweak some of the other parameters, and then wait until that child catches up to 10, and then we'll adjust the weight as they are above 10. So it's any age really. But it is CE marked, so it's sort of a clinical indication, and its licensing is from 1 year and up. But you can use it below if the clinical team think this is what needs to be done. You can use it. It's the only system to be able to be used with ultra rapid insulin. So Fiasp and Lyumjev, it's clinically indicated for it. We've got all the safety data for it. Where the other systems have only safety data for example, NovaRapid and Humalog.
Right. And so just thinking about that, if all you're doing, it's amazing with the setup, you just put in the weight, and what was the other thing that you have to put in?
Daily dose. So your basal and bolus average for the last 5 to 7 days, and off it goes. And it uses that. And so the steepest learning curve for the loop is the first 3 weeks, because, you know, everything's new.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't got any prior learning. So it really adjusts quite steeply over the first 3 weeks. But then it will just constantly learn. So it'll always err slightly on the side of caution. So you'll be slightly high rather than slightly low. So you'll see the first couple of nights you might be a bit higher than you ideally wanted, but every night you think, oh, it's getting better and better and better, because it's constantly got that feedback. And then, you know, summer holidays to school, and, you know, winter holidays, seasonal differences, your diet intake, your activity levels are different from summer to winter. Those are horrible little bugs that are coming at this time of year, you know, all the snotty noses and things like that, coping with illness. And as I sort of picked out a few of our users who unfortunately do have complications, such as that lady who had cancer or has cancer and is dealing with that remarkably. So if you have a complication, or you're having to have steroids that we know push up your glucose levels, the algorithm is able to manage that.
Wow. And so in a normal pump, when you've got, you can put in a period when you're at school and a period in school holidays, because like you've just mentioned, you have different insulin requirements at that time. Do you have a similar thing with this one, that you will say, right, we're at school now, or we're home, or does it have to just adjust itself?
So we try let the algorithm learn. So if it's a normal pattern for you, so if, for example, your child walks to school every day, it will learn that, and it won't have to adjust for that. But it's the football session that maybe once a week that we would use the activity setting, so the ease or boost.
Yeah.
The other function you can think about using is if you're, I don't know, on a day out off to Peppa Pig Land, or where, you know, to the park, or down on an outing for the whole day, you can also raise the personal glucose targets temporarily to just ask it to aim for a little bit higher. So you can use this personalization features depending on what you need. So I don't know, day one of flying in, I don't know, January to a summer holiday, so you're going from winter to summer, day one you might need to use ease off, just because it's such a sudden change from being winter to getting on a plane and landing in somewhere lovely. Oh, if only. You could use ease off for the first day or two, just to allow the system to go, oh, okay, something different's happening here. But then it very quickly adjusts.
Okay, I've got another question. Would you be able to use CamAPS if self-funding sensors?
Yes. So it doesn't matter where your funding comes from. So if you need a Dexcom G6 sensor, so if you're self-funding the sensor, there are some people who then self-fund the app themselves as well, because they've chosen that that's what they want to do. We would support you with the clinical team in exactly the same way, whether you're NHS funded or self-funded. You're not on your own. It's part of the same service we would deliver. And on the website is all the information about costing for the funding, if you want to self-fund the app for yourself.
Oh, that's good. Now, Jonathan has said, let's have a look. Can this system advise basal rates and bolus ratios when the insulin need changes or when the sensor changes?
Yes, so that is something that we support around optimization. So we, on the training platform, we not only train about how the system works, but there's some other training modules that you can do around optimization. So your total daily dose, the algorithm is obviously reporting that back to you. So there are ways to use that to optimize the basals for times of out of loop. And then the algorithm also tells you quite clearly if your insulin to carb ratios are too weak or too strong, by how it's responding to that bolus and how are you working. So we look into that detail. We can support, advise, kind of, this is what's happening. Obviously your own clinical changes need to be done with the support of your clinical team, but we can show you you know, what would look like, as it were, if your ratios are too weak. This is probably what you'd see if your ratios are too strong. In our experience, most people moving on to closed loop do need to tighten their insulin to carb ratios or make them more aggressive. but we don't do it automatically. The proof is in the pudding. It's around seeing what's happening and how it's working and how it's learning. So we generally sort of start that at about 1 or 2 weeks into starting the closed loop system to just do those little fine tunes.
Okay, great. Laura has made the point that because you're microdosing, it's happening constantly. If you have something wrong with the cannula and the tubing, if it gets bent and you're not getting, is work being done on the tubing type just to make sure that, or to minimize the risk of that happening?
So, I mean, all pump therapy, the cannula is the weakness. It's the Achilles heel. So it is something that I'm sure the pump companies and the manufacturers are doing to try support that. And it's not something sort of we're doing directly in our research, but it is something that is really important. And so it is still important, even though you're using this really cutting edge technology, the basics are really important. Site rotation, changing your sets regularly. So the app does have a reminder to change your sets just because life is busy. So it's a smart reminder. So when you do a set change, it knows from the pump and you can tell it, I want to change every 2 or every 3 days, and then it'll just alert you every 2 or 3 days. But if the doorknob catches the infusion set at day 1, which sometimes happens, it will then reset for 2 or 3 days. So it's looking about finding the right cannula for you and the real estate, especially on the little kids. So we tend to use a lot of steel cannulas just to reduce the sort of risk of cannula failure, because it's a real pig to have a cannula failure. It never happens at an opportune time. It's always in the evening or the middle of the night. And yeah, so it is the Achilles heel, and I'm hoping there will be a lot more improvements happening, but it just is where we are at the moment.
Right. Well, I think that's the end of the session there. I think I found that really interesting, Candice. You have a wealth of knowledge here, and you've been able to tell us all about it in a really easy to understand way. So thank you ever so much.
Brilliant.
And thank you everyone for joining, and please do remember to go and click and have a look at the sponsor booths. But yeah, once again, Candice, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening, and please don't hesitate to contact me if anybody's got any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.